around since the late 1800s and has gradually become one of America's favorite pastimes. Sundays in the fall are spent huddling at freezing stadiums and surrounding the 50-inch big screen television at home. Americans love watching their favorite teams go head to head every weekend on the field, especially when the Super Bowl rolls around, as this game gets to 80 to 110 million views since the 1990s. However, this game hasn't been so blissful as of late. It is understood that the first football games proved dangerous as athletes used to die from their injuries. Over time, though, the game got safer, or so we thought. There has been a rise in head injuries for NFL athletes in the past few decades. The number of concussions in the NFL has risen 58% from 2014 to 2015. This number is the most in recent years. At some point, we used to think a player hadn't sustained a concussion unless he had been rendered unconscious. The NFL supported this theory until many former players began to complain about memory losses and cognitive issues. The situation caused more than 200 lawsuits against the NFL. The league had no choice but to address this epidemic as the deaths of Junior Seau, Dave Duerson, Tyler Sash, and more influenced it to have to recognize what was actually happening. It infuriates me that the NFL would withhold this information, this valuable information that has affected many lives over the years. How could a league that prides itself on honesty do this to the players who have risked their lives for this game and everything they had? The NFL's dishonesty is an injustice to their athletes because it destroys not only their lives, but the lives of their families. This information could have caused NFL players to retire, and the NFL wanted to prevent this. For example, 23-year-old Buffalo Bills linebacker A.J. Tarpley and 32-year-old New York Jets left tackle DeBrickashaw Ferguson retired from their football careers early because of the risk of concussions leading to CTE and dementia. Many believe the effect of concussions is all in the heads of the former NFL athletes. However, post-concussion diseases are very real. I believe if football players would have known this information decades ago, many lives would have been spared. CTE not only causes cognitive issues and memory loss, but also depression and anxiety, and paranoia. This depression can consume the person and they may eventually commit suicide. This phenomenon is actually becoming more prominent. In 2012, former Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Javon Beckler killed his girlfriend and then himself. His brain was tested shortly after his death, and he was tested positive for the disease. On February 17, 2011, former Bears safety and Super Bowl champion Dave Duerson shot himself in the chest after struggling with chronic headaches, blurred vision, and memory loss. Before he died, he left a message to his family requesting that his brain be donated to the Center of the Study of CTE at Boston University. He was 50 years old. Two other retired NFL players, Andre Waters, 44, and Shane Dronett, 38, also committed suicide in the past 6 years. It is said that professional football and CTE, an acronym for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, are directly linked to each other. In fact, 87 of 91 former NFL athletes that donated their brains after their deaths were found to have this disease. Researchers have basically found CTE in every football position except for the kicker. According to the NFL, though, concussions didn't have any long-term effect on their athletes. Former quarterback Sage Rosenfels of the Minnesota Vikings explains how the NFL lied to their players. He says, "Early in my career, I remember hearing that the NFL used a rheumatologist as its concussion expert. He actually stated that it was fine to go back into a game after being knocked out or suffering a concussion. His expertise contradicts everything that a neurologist would say then and would say today." Recently, the NFL has been lying about their annual concussion reports across the league. They were supposedly using concussion protocols to make the game safer, and at the end of the season, they will report all of their findings. Although many penalties have been placed into the game to make it safer, such as head-to-head contact is illegal, head-to-head contact has climbed up to 92 this season, a 58% increase. However, the league has also miscalculated 100 concussions. This honesty goes against what God intended for each and every one of us. Honesty correlates with Jesus' greatest commandment, which is to love one another as we would love ourselves. God also desires for us to treat one another as we would also want to be treated. And the NFL treated their hardworking, dedicated athletes like show animals. The NFL thought more about the money they would lose by releasing the information rather than the many lives that would now be destroyed. The NFL went against natural law as they decided to contradict human reason of what God intends and pursue what they intended, which was money. They broke the 10 commandments of lying in the Old Testament and went against the love Jesus intended for us to share in the New Testament law. The NFL also committed perjury and lied in the court of law, breaking civil laws and covering up the evidence until it was absolutely necessary to release. They committed sins of commission because their actions were deliberate. Their objective was to protect the integrity of the NFL, and the circumstance was the risk of football losing its spot in the hearts of its fans. The Catholic Church has not weighed in on this issue, however, but the doctor, Will Smith, in the movie Concussion, used his Catholic faith to drive him in exposing the NFL's secrets. Jesus teaches honesty in John 8:44, which says, "You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Jesus is basically saying when we lie and do mischievous things, we are not of God, but we are of the devil. NFL officials have vices or bad habits of lying repeatedly. The thing about lying is that one lie leads to a cover-up lie, that leads to another lie, and so on and so forth. In order to move on from this problem, the NFL needs to hire employees that are committed to the players' health and well-being rather than greed. They also need strict concussion protocols and more neurologists in the locker rooms. The NFL needs safer helmets, more rule revisions, and a safer way to make tackles. The most important thing of all is that the NFL needs to talk about this issue more. Many avoid the concussion talks, but talking more would end the fears and help athletes get help sooner rather than later. Football is a great game, and I wish that the NFL officials could make the game safer for the next generation.